Hello, and welcome to today's SIG Cluster Lifecycle meeting for September 26th, 2017. We'll jump right into the agenda. I guess I've got the first two things on the agenda. The first one is 1.9 planning. 1.8 is maybe still on track to be cut tomorrow, but either way, it will be cut very soon. So as we've done for the past couple of releases, I created a doc. If you'd like to have access to the doc, please join the SIG mailing list. Otherwise, it'll ping me for access because I can't share it outside of the Google org, and it may take a little while for you to be able to see it because I have to find your email. It's like a bunch of stuff in the doc that would sort of carry over from last time and rejiggered the priorities based on some verbal conversations we'd had during previous SIG meetings. I don't think we're going to go over what those things are today necessarily, but I just wanted to put it out there so people could add other things they think are important for 1.9.
That's yeah, so Luke now joined, just to make sure we record this.
Yeah, I started the recording already.
Oh, I see. Cool. Great. Then that's okay. Should we go? Did you say like we just like mention it, or should we go over the things there as well?
Maybe if we have time at the end of the agenda, we can go through it in detail. I don't want it to derail from the other agenda items. I just wanted to mention that the doc was there and people should put stuff into it. So maybe we can review it and agree next week. I'm happy to come back to it at the end of the meeting if we have time. And the agenda looks relatively short, so we might have time.
I can say from the Haptio point of view, we're going through our own sort of 1.9 planning process and trying to figure out, our resources and, priorities and stuff like that. So hopefully that'll line up with this.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing the same thing at Google where we're trying to figure out what we can invest in for the next quarter or so. Do you think you'll have some answers by next week, Joe?
What do you think, Tim? How are we doing? I know you and Ross are talking about some of this stuff, right?
Yes, we are. So I think by next week we should have a rough sketch of where we can invest time into. I don't think anything is out of the ordinary because we've already started down the path. It's a question of whether or not we're going to have resources to devote towards other pieces or not. I think the standard ones still apply that we're carryovers for a couple of cycles now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the stuff is somewhat in flight and non-controversial, and the question is, are there other things we think are either more important to displace those things, or do we have enough, people to actually add to that sort of list of things that are already in flight?
I would absolutely be thrilled or love to have someone go through the backlog of the kubeadm repository and spruce it up and burn it down and triage.
Any volunteers? I took the hit last time.
I can do that. So I think I did that at the beginning of the 1.8 cycle. So that's some experience. I can do that over the next week or so.
Cool. Thanks.
Do you have labeling powers, Jamie?
No, I don't think so. I think you need to be part of I'm not sure what permissions you need, but no.
I was actually gonna bring this up. I think it's possible to at least add individual contributors without being in the org as well to projects.
Why wouldn't we add Jamie to the org though?
Yeah, I think we should, but then just follow the official follow the official process. If people don't want to do that, we can add them separately. But yeah.
Whoever does the triage needs to have label powers, otherwise it's kind of.
So I think there's some ambiguity right now about how people are added to the org, and I think the steering committee was going to solve a lot of that, but I think it's still very much in flight. So
it's actually we actually have a process.
Yeah, that process is actually working pretty well right now. So there's a process, send mail, and you have to have a couple of people say yes, this person's been doing good work, and it's pretty streamlined at this point.
Could I ask a huge favor, possibly? Something I'm hoping to see really materialize in 1.9 that we sort of started at too late in 1.8 was to have SIGs driving their own sort of product themes. So essentially, what I'd love to see is cluster lifecycle have whatever their 1 or 2 big themes are for this 1.9 release, sort of tie it to your backlog. And so we could start, in theory, filling out the release notes day 1. Like, here are the themes that we're shooting for, and then eventually that trickles down into the functionality and features that you add. So that basically eliminates this, what I consider relatively high level of churn with the product management group that happened this time. So that's an ask.
And Lucas was first. I started interrupting you, but I saw Lucas raise his hand first. So
okay, yeah, just a quick mention. I actually have documented these themes kind of already in the blog post. That's the first step, at least, which we're going to cover later. Yeah, go on.
For what it's worth, I think there's many colorful adjectives I could probably use about themed releases. Have you ever seen a Linux kernel with a themed release? Right? There's, I think they're done afterwards. But I think there are major features for a push, and maybe we could, instead of using the word theme, we have a listing of features that we're trying to identify and execute against. We should probably err on the side of being conservative, just given the history of how long it takes to get this done.
Yeah, so I mean, you're definitely talking to the right person to have that, share that viewpoint. What I'm trying to do is reconcile what is an existing sort of process thing around product management and where we're really at. In 1.8, I've been sort of torn in two by this, and it's been pretty difficult. So I'm actually going to propose a relatively radical change to product management, generally speaking, and it's more aligned with what you just said. But just for now, if we don't call it themes or whatever, but I just want to know, I would love to see us sort of outline, here's our goals from a higher level perspective about what we want to see in 1.9. And this is our trajectory maybe over the next couple of releases. Because that's really powerful for people to know what the trajectory is.
That's what I was going to say too. I think what Jace is really looking for is sort of a SIG roadmap of like, here's where we're headed as a SIG, and also like, here are the big changes in the next release. And we want to know that at the end of the release, obviously, but you know, if we sort of can set our sights at the beginning, and I think that sort of also ties back to the planning doc, because the planning doc is sort of where we say like, here are the big rocks that we want to get done in the next release. And so
yeah, and that'll just make all the scrambling that's happening at the end of releases is just, pardon me for saying this, but it's just stupid. Because the SIGs are doing a fantastic job planning and doing all these things, and then somehow at the end of the release, it's a fire drill about what's in the feature or what's in the release. It's like, why? What kind of world is this where we have to duplicate all that work again? You guys did all this already, so I want to squash this anti-pattern that's developed and make it more efficient.
Yeah, I think also to Tim's point about being conservative, I actually rather err the other way and put too many things in the sort of release notes that we generate at the beginning, and then just cut things out that didn't make it. Because it's a lot harder to identify at the end, like what are the deltas that we forgot about at the beginning that we slipped in, versus just here's a list of things. Oh, this didn't make it, this didn't make it, this didn't make it. Because like this time we had a couple things like, you know, add-ons that didn't make it. It was just really easy to cross that off the list and say, nope, that's not there. Right. Yep.
As long as somebody's dedicated to it, then I'm all for that. I think that as long as somebody's managing that, which technically speaking, I think that that product should be embedded in the team and the SIG and not the other way around. Because frankly, I mean, in Agile, who has a dev go to Agile planning meetings? It's just not, you know, you have it for kickoff, you guys decide where you're going to commit to for the release, and then you do it. Okay. I'm gonna get off my soapbox. Maybe it's just too fresh for me right now, being the lead, but I just want to thank you all too. You guys have done and gals have done amazing work, and I just appreciate it tremendously. It's been super helpful. And I'm done co-opting your meeting.
All right. Any other comments from folks about the 1.9 planning doc or planning process in general before we move along? Okay. As I said, we'll probably, if we have time at the end, we can come back and sort of walk through the doc itself. Next on the list, I put a link to the upgrade index. So this was something we created quite a while back, where we were trying to sort of collect from the community how different tools in the community actually perform upgrades. And I finally convinced someone at Google, met them to write down what Google Container Engine does for upgrades. And so I just wanted to sort of bring this back to people's attention because we haven't looked at it in a while. The point of this doc was to collect best practices to sort of inform the future of kubeadmin. There are a couple of links that are missing here still. So COPS and digital rebar that Rob had volunteered to write upgrades, the upgrade doc for. So if those people are around, I pinged them both a week ago or so. Haven't heard back. So I did want to mention that if people are interested in what Messam wrote, they can follow those links. Lucas, you're next with your blog post.
Okay, yeah, so as I said earlier, I was going to write a SIG update for 1.8. Basically, like what have we done the last two releases, 1.7, 1.8. A little bit of 1.6 as well, just like mentioning it was much more secure. Last update was January, right, or something like that, at least. So I said like what's probably going to make 1.6 and what we're planning to do like the rest of the year. And yeah, now I have one for review, and I'd appreciate if you took a quick look at it and yeah, maybe comment something or just LGTM. And yeah, also as said, talks a little bit about like what do we plan for 1.9 in terms of like making self-hosting the default and adding also support for AJ. It was basically that. And yeah, I think that's probably, and mentioning like now we have easier upgrades with kubeadm upgrade and experimental self-hosting support and the kubeadm face command. So yeah, I don't know what, any questions?
Is this something you're planning to publish on your own, or are we doing the same sort of marketing, like 5 days of Kubernetes or whatever? Is this part of that?
This is going to be part of 5 days of Kubernetes 1.8.
Excellent.
I started reviewing that, but there's been so many comments and review changes that like I don't know how much feedback you want or at this point, because I don't want to like, you know, add fuel to the fire right now. I think there's enough people covering that bit.
I think those all got resolved last night, Tim, if you want to take another pass.
Yeah.
It's pretty clean now.
This does start to look like a roadmap in sort of, you know, the what are we planning, where is this stuff going broadly? So, you know, I think there's definitely overlap between this being a little bit sort of theme-like, you know, the more nitty-gritty of the planning doc that Robbie's been sharing. You know, I think those things are, we want to make sure they're at least consistent.
Yeah, I mean, this is more on a high level, I guess. It talks about like AJ and self-hosting for sure, and like announcing that the kubeadm adoption working group has been started. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think those two roadmap items are pretty uncontroversial at this point.
Yeah, they are. Okay. If there weren't any other questions, we can proceed with the next one, I guess.
Yep, you linked to a couple of PRs.
Yeah, so basically there has been some like discussion on GitHub or PRs, proposed PRs related to DNS. We have now 3 of them open. One is adding support for core DNS, which we talked about 2 weeks ago. And pretty much everyone agreed that like if this is something SIG Network is happy with, and they seem to be, we'll add this behind a feature gate as alpha in 1.9, and then like if we then consider core DNS general to be stable or beta at beta level in 1.10, we can enable it by like make it replace kubeDNS by default. There is a proposal up. I could dig up that as well if I find it, and it basically is more Kubernetes general, like what's the scale requirements, how does it perform right now, like how can we make it not break users. Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you. I want to wait till your end. So.
Okay. Yeah, and so, like, how can we make it not break users? And all these general themes and questions in the proposal, and they are going to be resolved very soon, I guess. And there is one PR up for implementing that. Yeah, that's the first PR.
I have a meta question that I think maybe Jace or Joe could answer. Are we going to have an updated proposal process as we start to churn on things this cycle? Or is it still kind of in flight for a while? Because right now, if you walk through proposals, it's a wonderland. Right?
Actually, it's been improved, I think. But yeah.
So SIG architecture set a self-imposed timeline, I think, end of this week to try and sort of close on the proposal, at least some sort of epoch of the proposal stuff that's going on right now. I think we're going to continue to refine it. But some of this is like, let's get a format, let's actually try and get people to start using this stuff, and let's get some sort of reviews so that people see this. So I think we're trying to not sort of, sit on that forever.
I think the first artifact that will come out is a template, so I think that's a good start. So even if you move forward with whatever proposal you're doing outside of that process, if you could retroactively do the template, that would help us diagnose what we're missing as far as metadata or what other stuff. So we'll be in strong partnership moving forward on that. So
as long as you can PSA us as part of this meeting when the template's ready for prime time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's actually on there's a whole bunch of feedback on that template. I want to review it today. So it's actively on my list. In terms of the DNS stuff, though, I think there is this question of when and how, we shouldn't take in any components that aren't being sort of, beaten into submission with sort of the E2E process and all our test coverage and stuff like that, right? And so there's the chicken and egg of do we lead in terms of integrating new stuff versus other people lead? If we switch out sort of Kube up with something that's kubeadm based, then we are so how does this fit into that? So Lucas, yes.
I have testing on the agenda later today. Yeah, but so I guess it will be a collaboration, of course. I've researched into federated testing the last weeks, and it actually works.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, so I mean it's totally undocumented, and I want to change that. I put up just a personal repo, I can share it here as well, with some kind of guide, how to do it. I expect core DNS and maybe integrating, making a kubeadm alpha. I mean, we're gonna do that anyway, create a job that enables all of alpha features for kubeadm, or at least some self-hosting meanwhile. So, I mean, it's going to be integrated that way, end-to-end tested that way anyway. And I guess KubeUp is going to do the same. If SIG networking thinks this is the way forward, they are definitely going to add it to KubeUp as well. If we don't have time to adopt kubeadm before, but I don't think so. I think that will be a 3-4 release thing. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think there's this particular issue, and I think the larger thing of do we want, at some point we got to bite the bullet and say, let's try to swap out swap kubeadm in as being sort of the canonical way that a lot of this stuff is getting tested. Maybe that's a different topic.
Yeah. So I'm actively trying to push for kubeadm adoption. And
maybe the right way to do this is just do federated testing and have them both running side by side for a while, and at some point just sort of say KubeUp is now deprecated or optional or whatever. Yeah. All right. Cool.
Yeah, we're also trying to actively peel away bits of the test info that only run on kubeup right now. So Ajit's working on trying to figure out how to create skewed tests with kubeadm and Kubernetes Anywhere so that we can sort of peel that part of the upgrade tests away. We don't have automated upgrade tests for kubeadmin yet, so we're still relying on the kubeup upgrade test, right? So we're trying to peel away each of these things that sort of only kubeup is providing test coverage for.
Okay.
As we do that, we can get parallel test coverage and then rip the Band-Aid off.
Is that mostly been driven out of the SIG testing, or is that something that we should be talking about more here?
I think we should probably be talking about that.
Yeah, definitely. I've been hanging around in SIG testing a bit, and yeah, there's interesting stuff going on for sure. We should probably document a little bit more, though.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
yeah. So back to like the three PRs. So yeah, it's we have core DNS. Then we have like Matt has integrated with kubelet, has been the first one to adopt kubeadm successfully to kubespray. And one issue was like he wanted to use non-standard like DNS IP, and like it's the second IP or something in the service range. We like just take the 10th, and yeah, so that makes basically kubeadm return 1, exit 1, instead of like it says like you can't. kubeadm tries to update the service to be the 10th IP, like this idempotent thing, and then it basically just fails. So I mean, it's workaroundable. He has done a workaround for this now, but the more general question or theme is like, how do we configure add-ons? And I mean, this is a painful one. We're all kind of like waiting for the add-on API to just pop up, and nobody has any time to like research into all the nitty-gritty details there are with upgrades, like reconfigurations, dynamic configuration, and I mean, Brian has doc with declarative application management that also ties into this, and like all these, it's a so large topic, and I mean, meanwhile, what should we do? That's basically my question. The third PR is basically another way to calculate the 10th IP.
So right now, kubeadmin basically throws its hands up for the add-ons, doesn't do anything with add-ons except for kubedns and kubeproxy, which are sort of required for networking to work, right?
Yeah, and that's just the kubectl apply. It's nothing more.
Right, and I was having a conversation with Tim yesterday when he was in town about add-ons, and he kind of said like he added the DNS directory, that add-ons DNS directory, because we sort of needed DNS to work and didn't expect add-ons to sort of grow organically into the terrible state that they're in now. And so I think we've sort of generated some technical debt for ourselves there, and like you said, sort of haven't had the manpower to remove that.
Is Tim claiming credit for that? Because I seem to remember creating the add-on stuff, and I'm sorry. If you want to take one for the team, that's okay.
But that's what I was going to say is kubeadmin is not sort of in the business of doing other add-ons like the dashboard or Grafana or InfluxDB or anything like that. But I think DNS is sort of core to making the system work. And so I think it's reasonable to have a flag to switch kubeadmin between two DNS providers until we actually have a proper add-on solution. And the other PRs seem totally legitimate. Like there's no reason, again, I think the reason we chose the 10th offset is because it was really easy to program in Bash. like not for any good reason. So like it's perfectly reasonable to switch that to actually use a Go library to calculate the proper like 10th IP instead of adding 0, and to make that address configurable. Like it's actually configurable in kubeup also. So we just never never configure it.
So the third PR or whatever is basically making it configurable via the config file. Is again like if we're gonna push for kubeadm, the kubeadm API, config API to be like an API for the control plane, I guess this somehow. I mean, it's hard. Where should like DNS service IP, should it be as should it be like treated on a cluster control plane level, etc. I mean, the PR that actually calculates the thing in a correct manner is fine. It's totally fine. But I'm wondering, should we expose this in the config file? Should we like somehow throw our hands up and say like, if you have edited it yourself or like add an annotation or something like, don't touch this? Should kubeadm just like proceed and exit 0? Or I mean, what's the preferable thing to do here?
Is there a good reason not to stick it in the config file for now? I mean, the config file stuff's all alpha, and we can change our mind later. And this unblocks that, right?
So here's the thing. I think there is this question of, do we want to take add-ons as a general thing, or do we want to say DNS is special and let's just fix it? And I'm leaning towards DNS is kind of special here, let's just fix it. And we can always do generic add-ons later, but we got a real problem right now that we can tackle.
Yeah,
that's basically what I was proposing too, Joe.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to like boil it down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should like solve the generic add-on issue just for DNS side. So as we don't have the manpower, but yeah, I think just fixing DNS now. But I was just thinking, as we start envisioning the kubeadm config API, which we're gonna think like with kubecorn and maybe something like the cluster API, we think this as the API of the control plane. Do we want this to belong that? Or I mean, that was mostly my question. I mean, I'm fine with LJTMing the PRs and just making them go in, but it was more like, do we see this long term or longer term that kubeadm should like expose a knob for the service IP there?
I guess I will say that in GKE, we have not found that to be necessary, right? Nobody complains if we just pick an IP that works and DNS just works. But if other install tools that are built on top of kubeadmin require us to be able to configure that, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't make that an optional field you can configure, because it's pretty easy to plumb through the system.
I think people are going to want to choose what the sitter ranges are for their network and for their service IPs, and as long as we pick something out of that, like maybe we just the second one is DNS out of that range, then it's fine. I think the problem right now is that you have to configure these two things in two separate places, and they have to line up or bad stuff happens. And so we need the configurability, because we don't actually sort of like stitch this stuff together in a sane way by default.
Right, yeah,
I don't think
so. Well, in kubeadm right now we have the service subnet configurable, and then calculate automatically the DNS IP based on that, like from the range. The problem is like now KubeSpray like turned up and said, hey, I have my custom service subnet, but I don't want the 10th IP. It's this problem, and it's like I'm generally hesitant to add more fields to the kubeadm API, like to avoid this kube up thing where like everything can be configured. And in the end, we don't see like the important stuff because way too much is configurable. So just not to jump into that rabbit hole.
So Matt's not here, but does he say in the PR why he needs to configure this? Is it what Joe's saying, that basically because we have to plumb this in two places, it needs to be set a priori and plumbed in two places? And can we fix that problem?
I think it's mostly about like preference, legacy. I don't know.
Can I jump in there? Why don't we, like in a config map, sorry, in a component config world, where is this setting going to live? And let's just put it where it's going to be, right? And do we want a setting in kubeadm that then is a duplicate of the actual place it's going to be?
So I don't know. I mean, the question is, who's going to create the service, right? Is it something, do we deploy a kubeDNS workload that creates its service? Or
I think that what will happen is we'll probably put it somewhere because it's hard coded. Ugh, that is a nightmare.
Yeah, it's just a thing. It's like that thing shows.
I guess, well, how about this? What if I know it's not great? What if API server discovered it from the service?
So what?
I can't remember who it is, or KCM. Who actually needs it?
Doesn't the kubelet need to be plumbed in with this?
It's a kubelet.
You set it as a flag, basically. But I mean, I think it really just depends on their use case. I mean, I can't really envision why you would need to override it. But if they have a strong use case where they need to determine like their own offset, then one more config won't hurt. It depends how strong their use case is, really. I mean, I don't really have anything for or against.
Okay, so
I mean, I know that Bootkube, for example, they sort of declaratively say 10 is the DNS offset and like 1 is the API server and like 20 is etcd. So yeah, and then they sort of do the same thing as us in terms of like modifying the service IP. But yeah, I don't think it's configurable in Bootkube either. It seems
But just to be clear, so if I want to use a service IP range that is not the default, I have to both pass a new parameter into kubeadmin, and I have to adjust the system D files on all my nodes for the kubelet, right?
Yes. I have like an agenda item for that as well.
So I think the first thing is to make this be configurable by mortals. It's like right now, if you change the service IP range, you're probably going to get it wrong, and it's going to break in a non-obvious way.
Yeah. So that's happening now, but that's because we don't have the like make information flow. It's a separate issue, right? Because it's make information flow down from control plane to the like system.
Yeah.
And
we
do have that
config for kubelets.
Yeah. So we do. Yeah, exactly. We do have that as all fine 1.8, and I'm investigating as we speak to enable that by default. It's going to be GA probably in 1.9. Kubelet dynamic configuration. So that's great. But
is that on our 1.9 list? We should make sure that actually shows up.
Yeah. I have it
to
in
me, that's the thing that's going to hit probably most users that are going to tweak with this thing. And then there's a separate thing of like, okay, do I also then go ahead and override the DNS? The actual offset or the actual IP address for the DNS service.
I mean, one sort of incidental plus of adding a separate sort of offset config param is that it kind of bubbles up the implicit expectations of what we set it to. And it becomes something people are aware of, because right now, I guess they have to dig through the code base and find out what that offset is if they want to manually configure the kubelets. So if we make it configurable, then it might be more obvious to people who want to configure the kubelet DNS, the cluster DNS. So yeah, that could be another plus there.
I think what you said before, though, Jamie, is spot on, which is we should figure out what their use case is and figure out if this is the right way to solve it. So
yeah,
Lucas, can you ping the PR and ask Matt to put it there or come to the meeting next week and explain?
Yeah, I'll do so. I if I understood it correctly, it's just like they chose something as in the same way as we chose something. We chose like 10 for kubeadm, bootcube, and kubeup, and they chose 2. And well, so yeah, I'll talk to him. And I mean, one other problem also is like we already do. DNS basically has 2 knobs right now. It's the DNS IP and the DNS domain. We already have the domain in the kubeadm configuration. So I mean, it's because it's gonna the API server serving cert should be signed for like Kubernetes default service and the DNS domain. Otherwise, you will get some nasty errors when using cluster DNS. So, yeah, it's hard, I guess. I'll look that up and talk to him, and we'll see how we can. I mean, this is gonna be kubeadm's problem as long as kubeadm is the creator of kubedns, right? So yeah, okay, cool. So then I have, like, as we talked about a minute ago, that we should switch to using kubelet dynamic configuration. I linked to the documentation PR that myself and Mike Thorfinn worked on. And yeah, it's basically you create a config map. It can be named whatever, basically, and there's one key that has to be kubelet, that should be kubelet, and there you can put in the value there, you put an API group, like using the current API machinery we have for the kubelet. This is currently in alpha, but it's probably gonna graduate to GA, like version 1 in 1.9. And yeah, so it basically works as you set a annotation, or I think it was an annotation or label or whatever on the kubelet, on the node object, and basically tells the kubelet, like, look for configuration here. It will download the configuration from the config map and put it locally on disk, in some kind of directory. It will then exit 1 and pick up the configuration on the next reboot, like restart. So yeah, and that makes it for the first time possible for kubeadm to flow this information down from, like, currently, as Joe said, like, if you go ahead and specify a service, a specific service subnet, DNS is going to break unless you manually configure every kubelet in the system service. So it's going to be really, really useful.
My only hesitation of adopting the feature is if we don't think it will actually make it to beta or GA. As long as we think it will hit one of those gates, I don't see any reason we wouldn't want to take it. I know in the past we've adopted things that have only sort of been alpha, but I think as kubeadmin matures and we want to push it towards GA, we need to sort of be a little bit more hesitant in terms of adopting and depending upon things that themselves are not fully baked. So
I think early on we did alpha stuff because we couldn't get the darn thing to work otherwise. But we can't chase shiny. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a natural part of, like, graduating kubeadm. That's why we didn't do it in 1.8. I talked to Mike, and it's probably gonna be beta in 1.9. It's at least, but it may as well go GA, depending on some stuff I don't exactly know, but yeah.
Do we have a listing? Because we've talked about 1, 2, 3, like at least 4 major meta topics. Do we have like tracking issues for all of these things?
I created 20 issues last 2 weeks ago also and marked them 1.9. I can paste the milestone.
If we want to do like a meta tracking one that said, here are all the things for 1.9 and here are all the links to the children that have all the things, that would be super helpful, because then it's like a single jump point. It's almost like a wiki, right?
Yeah, but that's going to be immensely hard to
maintain.
Keep up to date. Yeah.
Well, if we have like the primary children, then I think that's good enough.
So basically what I see like on a technical level is adopting like etcd 3.1, adopting kubelet dynamic configuration, removing all the old stuff in the code base like that required. It was legacy for 1.7. That's already in progress. Using priority and preemptation as we talked about, like making that better. Certificate rotation for the kubelet serving cert maybe. Checkpointing. Self-hosting by default. High availability. And yeah. One interesting one is we should start running kubemark or like performance tests on kubeadm. I made an issue for that as well. Basically to move from, as Robert said, like move more and more things from being runnable. I mean, I have no idea how kubemark is configured on, like, is it easy or hard to run? Anyway, the scripts that are utilizing it heavily depend on kubeup. So it would be great to, like, again, have some kind of generic kubemark the hard way or something like that told people what's
Maybe we can take it offline, but I believe kubemark is create a regular cluster and then you run pods in the cluster that represent more kubelets to get sort of fake scale, right?
Yes.
So the underlying part of create a cluster, you already know how to do that. So it shouldn't actually be that difficult to switch that test over. I mean, I'm sure there's some plumbing that they reuse some of the bash variables and stuff.
Prior to my move, we had people work on making it more agnostic, but I don't know exactly what state it lives in now.
Okay. Yeah, as I said, like, I'd be really happy to see more people be like have labeling rights in the repo, so we could be more people collaborating on the 1.9 milestone, like adding things as you see fit and creating issues and labeling them.
This is part of the
reason. If we had the bot, if we had the bot too, you could just do a sign and label.
Yeah. Actually, that might work, but again, it's a bit limited. It can't set the milestone, and it's mostly like kind and area maybe. So, yeah.
What I was going to say is this is part of the reason we split our issues out of the main repo is so that we could add more people to help us do issue triage and stuff. So I think the only thing here is, like, I think you need to be part of the org to easily be added. So if you'd like to be someone who can flip labels and so forth, just please request access, and that'll go to the current maintainers, and we can approve you.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's flip labels for the kubeadm repo. As far as I know, it's you have to be a Kubernetes maintainer in order to get write access to the main repo, which gives you label access. And there's quite a high bar for like that. You have to. There's a process, yes, but you have to like file a pretty long application request along with a lot of endorsements from other people. So it's not as straightforward as, like, because it gives, as a side effect, it gives you LGTM, like, it gives you LGTM privileges for any PR. So that's why it was great to move out to kubeadm for issue tracking. It lowers the bar significantly.
All right. Next we have CAD first.
Well, 1 second. This previous topic, Lucas, do you think about upgrade testing for 1.9? Is it also on the table?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm thinking a lot about testing right now. We definitely need to add even more suits and different kinds of jobs and these kinds of things. I create an issue for a kubeadm upgrade job from stable, like in this case 1.8 to master. We should create such a one. And is that what you mean, or I guess?
Yes, that part. And actually, the next topic which I wanted to bring is related to it. So since the time where release 1.8 branch was created, we lost all across build jobs. So there is nothing right now produced for 1.8 branch.
Yeah, it's known issue. I'm
yeah,
talking
it's
with
known, but with whom we need to talk to get it enabled.
Yeah, so it's Jeff Grafton is the person to talk to. I talked with him about this yesterday, and the problem is, so now I think the release branch 1.8 release branch started pushing control plane images, but the like txt file isn't updated yet. Oh, and for like the general group, this is to reiterate, this is about like control plane images that are pushed from our CI jobs, which basically makes it possible to just do kubeadm init or kubeadm upgrade and say like CI and a specific version, and you can just it will automatically use these images that are built from basically head. So that's really useful for testing, and we're going to utilize it for like upgrade to master job, like as soon as 1.8 is out. Did you have any more questions?
And as soon as a couple of PRs are merged for allowing these labels to be used in upgrade command. I think that's it for that topic.
Okay. Did you have another topic as well?
I think he got moved up. He was asking in chat about upgrade testing 1.9.
Okay.
Speaking of upgrade testing, I don't see Jessica on the call, but she pinged me this morning and said that since the automated upgrade testing for 1.8 is not quite working yet, she's going to start doing the manual upgrade tests today, so that we do have some signal that upgrade tests for kubeadm work before we cut a release. And I've got that sort of at the very top of the 1.9 list of issues is finish the automation of that, because I think it's pretty close.
Well, I'm gonna ping Sen again. So basically last night, while Europeans were sleeping, they discussed kube test issue. I mean, this is the upgrade test right now for kubeadm is blocked on some kind of really weird test infra path issue. So basically it starts the cluster successfully. It executes some initial E2E tests, but then it's gonna like invoke kube test, the main artifact of test infra again, and it just execs the wrong path, and it's pretty annoying. Jessica actually has, so we are basically sure that if we could get this part right, somehow come through test infra, the test will start passing. But yeah, Jessica just said that she's gonna do manual testing today. Hopefully hopefully we can get Sam to merge Jessica's PR that will fix the path issue as well.
Yeah, I linked the PR in the meeting notes also. But barring that getting in, we're still going to do manual testing, because if the release is going to get cut tomorrow, even if we get the automated testing working today, we're still not going to have very many runs of it probably. By the time everything gets merged and everything, and we work out any other kinks. So we'll at least have some signal for manual testing. And like I said, I think we're close on the automated testing, and so we'll get that finished up regardless of when the release is cut.
Yeah. Jace, are you still on the call?
I am indeed.
Cool. So yeah, just to bring something up that we talked about in SIG released yesterday, basically everyone noticed that like the kubeadm jobs weren't in master blocking, which nobody seemed to notice before. And yeah, so we made the kubeadm jobs to be master blocking for like all 4 releases going forward. But yeah, just if you had some comment or something to say there.
No, I think that we absolutely should target for master blocking, because the life cycle of kubeadm is so tightly coupled with the nucleus right now. I think long term, I'd like to see more of a Helm-like approach, but there's no, right now there's absolutely no way that we can do that. There's way too much coupling, so I think that it makes sense. And I also appreciate that we're going to expedite the manual testing to get some signal right away on this, because I think that signal is important. And getting the upgrade test running and monitored throughout the life cycle of 1.9 is also super helpful, because the whole getting the upgrade testing and all that working at the last minute is not a functional thing that does not scale. It's been a huge impediment. So once again, you're doing all the right things, and so we just need to. Can you clone yourselves and perhaps share those practices with other people?
Yeah. On the like coupling of kubeadm, yeah, I mean, we're eventually moving out, but we like talked about this a year. The one that's moving first, just so like the API machinery and kubectl like will take the main parts of like moving out to a repo first, and we'll follow in its footsteps.
Yeah, and every time Jacob checks on their progress, it's like
to Justin.
I was going to say you're not exactly first, but sure.
That's the plan.
Great, thanks.
All right, so our last agenda item, we have about 5 minutes left, is testing. Again, we've already started talking about that a little bit, but was there anything else you wanted to discuss on that topic, Lucas? Is there anything else anybody else wants to talk about testing? Looks like we may have lost Lucas.
I'm trying to get more COPS testing up and running. It is very doable to do outside the repo. ZML set up something really cool, which I think is really smart. And I think generally we have to have a discussion. I don't think this is the particular SIG, but in general about like how we do cross-project testing and all of that, and how we're going to assemble the repo. And the same thing came up with the CNI issue with the release, right? Like where we don't really have good control over versions of things that aren't in the core repo, and we're going to have to figure that out somehow. And I don't think this is necessarily this. It is by definition a much more cross-cutting concern than just this SIG's concern. But
yeah, I'm not sure who does that, honestly. I mean, like we got to figure that stuff out.
Is it going to be like SIG architecture, or I just don't even know like who the.
Yeah, I mean, but I think we need a good proposal, a good plan around the multi-arch stuff that really takes testing and sort of how do we create and draw versions for releases together. You know, we're going to need something like the tool that the Android folks use to actually construct a tree out of a ton of repos. Maybe, I don't know, right? because we're not gonna we're gonna have all these things that have their own sort of vendor directories, and we're gonna want to make sure that we test them as a set. And yeah.
I like the idea that we're going to basically split up all the repos and then create another repo that pulls them all back together. That amuses me.
Yeah. It's not, yeah, okay. Different discussion. But yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I kicked out of assume something somehow broke. I don't know what you talked about just, but I guess
we just filled time until you came back. I said that we're trying to get some more COPS tests up and running, and that there is some some COPS ED tests, and there is a good precedent there for how we are going to test things that are in different repos, which is a bigger issue.
Yeah, and on federated, that's why I tried to research into federated testing as well. We should definitely get a better story there, and make it a lot easier for others to run kubeadm tests on Azure or AWS and whatever. And yeah, basically, Jacob wasn't here today. Is there anyone, by the way, that wants to work on testing here, for kubeadm? That would be highly appreciated.
I'll talk it over as part of our discussions that we're having internally. I'll add it to the queue.
Yeah,
I'll give you a response next week.
That's I think the best we can say right now.
Yeah, also maybe if we have some kind of meta issue for testing to just sort of break down the pieces, it might be easier for folks to volunteer, because yeah, it's a bit of a daunting prospect just to make testing work flawlessly for kubeadm. So yeah, it can maybe help out if some of the bits look, digestible.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a long issue, a long vision of what I see would be plausible, but also these micro issues with tweak this param in test infra and make this work. So yeah, that sounds great. Thanks.
All right, we're just about out of time. Any last minute agenda items, or should we call it?
Well, there is the kubeadm adoption working group, I believe, immediately after this in the same room. Other than that,
yes. Although I'm going to close the meeting so I can join the burn down meeting.
Yeah, I think we'll keep that adoption short, because I imagine everyone will want to go into that burn down meeting.
Yes.
More urgently.
So, all right. With that, we'll call it. We'll see everybody next week.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.